beginning of my video. Boom!
Welcome back to Boring Reviews.
Boring land.
Oh, just kidding.
Blasphemer!
Hello,
right.
Boring Review Nation!
Kind of pointless.
We know all things. It was over in a snap.
We really want it. Alright, we'll be nice.
Only you can be a Patreon.
Oh my gosh!
You don't need to follow the show to be hyped.
Hello, Boring Review Nation! Gabe!
Nick.
And we're here today to review a special film. You know what? Nick, you want to introduce the film?
Yeah, so we are looking at a film that was requested by quite a few different people. And it's funny because a few days ago, Shubham on Instagram, he's like, "Where's the Super 30 review at?" And I'm like, you know what? That's a good question. Where is it at? And so we're looking at Super 30. This is a film with Hrithik Roshan, and it is a movie based on the real life of Anand Kumar, the mathematician. And it's kind of cool. At the end of the movie, you kind of see them in the other classroom teaching as Hrithik's character, Anand, is teaching. So it's a biographical film directed by Vikas Bahl. And this movie came out in 2008. No, hold on. This movie came out in 2019. I was just reading Principal Photography was 2018. But this is a film where I'm telling you, the poster for this movie, and I'll put it right here, is kind of creepy looking. It looks almost like a horror film. I mean, you got Hrithik's head right here and all the red around it.
Right.
And for as weird as it sounds, when I did a trailer reaction to it, that poster afterwards kind of turned me off to this movie. Like, I don't know if it was just me or what, but the poster is very misleading. It's not what the movie's about. It's not a horror film whatsoever. Right. And you asked not too long ago, and I think the Chris 3 video, you know, can Hrithik Roshan act? Well, I think we got the answer to that question, right?
Holy cow. You know, it's funny. Nick texted me late, probably, I want to say midnight. And he was like, bro, you need to watch Super 30, put it on the docket. I'm not going to do this review without you. Because he was getting ready. He had already watched it. He was getting ready to review it. And then he texted me probably a night or 2 nights ago. He was so excited about it. So I finally got to it. And did it answer my questions? Bro, I found myself uncontrollably like leaking, bro, just gushing tears out of my eyes at the end. Like, holy cow, can he act? I think that's one of those situations where, again, you can only do what the director gives you, right? With the material they give you. And a good point about that is, look at a guy like Michael B. Jordan, who has been nominated for several awards. Fruitvale Station, which was like the darling of Sundance, and I mean, people love him in Creed. Killmonger is probably one of my favorite villains in the MCU, but he's also in my most hated comic book movie, Fantastic Four, and I was like, that thing was a disaster. But again, Ryan Coogler directed that. There's a big directed the rest of his films. He went away from Ryan Coogler, and it was a disaster. Since then, check the record. He hasn't done anything without Ryan Coogler. You know what I'm saying, bro? So it's one of those situations where, again, Creed 3 is probably a very different film than Super 30, but it was one of those situations where it was even awkward where I'm like trying to stop myself, but like, dude, it was uncontrollable. It was such a powerful film. Right now, off the bat, I'm gonna tell you, I put it up there with Three Idiots, with
Wow.
with top.
Does that mean par?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Let us get this out of the way right now. We're going to be biased because we're educators. So as teachers, obviously we're biased when it comes to this film. So understand that. With that being said, whether you're a teacher or not, just being a human being, you should get some emotions from this, unless you're that 1% that is above everybody else and doesn't struggle. But everybody else who's not part of that 1% should feel something when you watch this film. Holy cow, bro. Thank you, actually, for not doing this review without me and making me watch this movie, Nick, because it really, really is one of those films that, wow, the emotions set in. And afterwards, I was like, I'm proud of what I do. And I know that, again, I haven't had that kind of an impact. And we'll talk about the kind of impact he's had on students. But I know I've made an impact in some students' lives. And you just feel good about yourself after that as an educator. And like, wow, this is why I do this.
Yeah, no, you're welcome for not doing without you. So there's been some nights during this whole lockout or whatever, a lot of nights where I just can't sleep. And I'm not going to be fake. I'm not going to go into every single night. Can't wait to watch an Indian film, because there's a lot of American films I like to rewatch, or I like to watch for the first time, Netflix or whatever. But there has been a lot of days recently where I'm just in the mood for an Indian movie. So what do we got next? And I know Gabe can't always watch as many movies as I can because he's working full time. I mean, I'm working full time too, but I'm in a specialist position. He's full time as a teacher. He's still in the trenches. And I mean, he's got so much going on. He's got his family. He's got his son he's worrying about. He's got a lot of stuff going on. So I know he can't. And he's also watching the test. He just finished that. I know he couldn't dedicate a lot of time to these movies. And so I just started banging these out. I just did a review for Bad Hi Ho recently. But when I finished it, I'm like, if I do this review without him, and someday he comes back to it and he sees what it's like, he's going to come out of retirement from his own boxing days. He's going to hunt me down. And if you don't know Gabe, he is the most like calm, gentle guy in the entire world. But he used to be a prize fighter. I'm not taking that chance. But in all seriousness, this movie really affected me. I have a few issues with it, very small issues, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But this movie is super powerful. And like Gabe said, it hits home for us as teachers. Me and Gabe are very similar when it comes to teaching. We thrive on student success. Now, all teachers, obviously, but what I mean by that is everyone is talking about test scores at all times. And just a little bit of glimpse into our teaching styles. We are all about our student success, but we like to see on the hardest test of the year, the end of the year state test that we have here in the United States, how did my students do compared to their peers? Now, I feel as a teacher, there's more obviously than just test scores. That is just a small part of what we do. Right. But why would you not judge yourself against the best, and the hardest test out there? And so me and Gabe, we always want to prepare our students not to take that test. We want to prepare our students to be able to pass any test they're given in life and in the classroom. And so when Anand is starting his Super 30 Academy, and he does it for so many reasons we'll get to in a little bit, but he is all about, let's see if you can pass this test to show that it doesn't matter how rich your parents are, that you deserve to be an ITT. I relate to that so much because that's always my ambition. Can I, as a teacher, no matter where my students are at academically, when I get to them, can I motivate them? Because that's a huge part of it. And can I educate them in a way that they understand with the different ways that they learn so that they can pass any test they get in that grade level? And so when he did what he did, I mean, it totally inspired me. And again, it's so easy to get caught up in test scores and that nonsense. It's nothing about that. And I've had this conversation with many educators. I don't care about test scores. What I care about is reflecting on my own craft. Did I prepare my students to take anybody's test that is grade level standards? That's what it's about. And so this, like you said, this movie definitely pumped me up, and I just couldn't do it without you.
And it's one of those things where here's what it goes back to, and I know exactly what you mean. Yes, we all grade ourselves with these big state tests, you know what I mean? But ultimately, what you care the most about is, did your kids learn? Okay, going back, and again, that's why some of these films are so powerful. And Amir Khan says a line where it doesn't matter if you memorize or a test and you're able to regurgitate something. Remember when he wrote that speech and the guy was able to say the speech, but he changed the words because the guy didn't actually learn anything. He memorized some lines and he kept changing the words, made the guy look like a fool and 3 idiots. Anybody can memorize things, but did you really teach them? Did they learn? One of my proudest moments as an educator came with a student who came into 4th grade with like a primary, grade reading level. And obviously student confidentiality, I'm not going to say a name, but the student I'm talking about. And he grew exponentially. He went from like the 1 percentile all the way up to like the 25th percentile. Now, does that mean he's going to score like a 4 on the SBAC and he's going to ace? No, but he grew the most of any student. And it showed that he grew and he can learn. Most importantly, it taught him he can learn. And that's something that he's going to be able to take with himself moving forward. Man, like I said, dude, the emotions, especially this week, and here in America, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. We've been out of school for close to 3 months. I've had when I say students, obviously students' parents send me Starbucks cards. I had another student send me card to what do you call it? Olive Garden. They know I love Italian food. Okay, I had one whose parent had them write a big poster, and on one side it said "Happy Teacher Appreciation." It was kind of like a, what do you call those? A boomerang. And then when he turned it around, it was like Mr. Larry, like little things. It didn't even matter what it cost, but just the fact that they thought about me. And it's probably one of the biggest honors of my life was having one of my former students from like 7 years ago last year asked me to interview the most influential educator in her life. And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like when you play that kind of role in a kid's life, you're like, wow. And that's what he did. Like this movie, man, like I said, to put it up there with Three Idiots and Tamir Zir, probably always get that pronunciation confused, but it's that kind of powerful. This film is super powerful. And man, why was this not submitted? And I get it, with education stories, it's probably not going to get the most buzz. But if this was 2019, I would have liked to see this get submitted. Maybe it did. I don't know. But this was the kind of powerful story. Like, how could you not, how could anyone not relate to this? Again, unless you're a part of that 1%, those elites that don't, their kids are kings. Like you said, kings train, king trainers, train kings. No. The rest of us that have to fight to get there. Oh man, it was amazing. So I know why you told me to make sure I watch it with you and do this review. So thank you. And let's get into it. You've gotten so good at doing these quick 5-minute reviews. So I'll let you do that, and then we'll go back into the specific scenes we like and things of that nature.
Yeah, so a quick synopsis on this film, and I was so confused by the title. I felt like such an idiot once you find out why it's called Super 30. But in this movie, you have Anand Kumar, and it starts off with him getting this educational award because he's just that smart. He's a genius, for crying out loud. And like most geniuses that at least we see in movies, socially he's a little inept, but he's got a super hot girlfriend, so he's not that inept. But this guy, he is from a very poor family. His dad is a postal worker, a mailman, super sweet guy, working his whole life. But he wants to get, so there's a whole lot that goes on. But long story short, he gets accepted into Cambridge, and all he has to do is just show up, and he's be able to get educated there. And his parents don't have enough money to even get him there. So he had met the minister of education for his district, for his state, whatever it was, played by
baby.
This guy is in every single movie.
He's amazing.
So he meets him, and the guy's doing the whole political thing, like, "Oh, I'll help you out whenever you need it." So he took him by his word, and his dad gets a loan out just so he can go as far as where the minister is at and to ask for some extra help. And it's like cameras rolling, it's a whole PR stunt, and the guy's like, "No, that's not what we do. You have my wishes and good luck, and you'll be able to get in, but that's not what I do." I mean, you find out later on in the movie, he's all about himself. He's not about the people. But it was so heartbreaking. I thought he was going to go to Cambridge, he was going to learn, then he was going to do something else. And so they had to go back. And not only are they in debt, but he wasn't able to get to Cambridge. And then, long story short, his father gets hurt, gets killed. I think we assume he dies. They don't really get too much into that, but he's not around anymore. So obviously he dies. And then the son starts selling these sweets or these foods in a little cart just to make ends meet, just to make a few pennies a day. And he falls over, or he doesn't get run over, but he gets kind of knocked over a little bit by this car of this guy who was also the smart guy who started this school of excellence, where they tell you that ITT is the most coveted school for technical school that they have in India. And if you want to go there, you have to pass this test. And they have these tutoring programs all over the place where you pay big money to be tutored by the best so you can pass that test. Talk about test scores. And so he knows who Anand Kumar is. He remembers how smart he was. He says, "Hey, why don't you come work for me? We'll make a whole lot of money." And Kumar was like, he was trying to find any pennies he could that fell over. And so he got into that world. He became a superstar right away. Everybody wanted to be in his class. He was making money. He's buying motorcycles. He's getting more confidence. There's a whole lot I missed about the girlfriend and how that worked out. She was arranged marriage, and he wasn't able to go to Cambridge. So she couldn't fight off her dad anymore, and she had to get arranged. And she was mad about that. But I'm sorry. He got made the money. And then when he decides to start his own school and do it for free, then she's realized, I can't convince my dad to let me be with you because you don't have any money. He starts his own school because ethically he realizes that we are just training king's sons to be the next king. We need to train other people to be able to have that kind of mantle. So he opens it up to everyone far and wide. And that was a cool part of this movie, really small part. You see these kids from all over the place getting these flyers, and the one mom is like, take the money and go. Let me hold him back. I mean, that was crazy. The one guy river rafting, they're just trying to get there any way that they can. And they go to this tutoring program, and he is there to get them into ITT, to help them out, do it for free. Him and his brother, who was an awesome character, they're trying to do everything they can to get these kids fed so that they can tutor them and prepare them to have a chance in life, because with the hands they were dealt, they were not going to that school. They were not getting the help they needed. But, I mean, that was his goal. And as the movie goes on, you can see how that goal unfolds. But this movie is so much more than just that. It's kind of impossible to do a quick synopsis of this film, but that's what it is. He starts his own free pro bono tutoring school to help these kids out.
You did a fabulous job, bro. Fabulous job. So here's a couple things that I think were really important. Like everyone else, when he initially becomes that superstar and starts teaching at the rich kid school and the tutoring school, the money gets to his head. He buys himself a gold chain, watches, motorcycle, like you mentioned. But I think that what really there was one instance when he was trying to get a loan so that he can go to Cambridge. And they're like, no, we don't do that. We don't give loans so that you can get an education. You know what I mean? So then later on, fast forward, when he's a person in the position to help a poor student who's really, really bright, who he sees is working on a problem just because he likes working on math, he likes working on problems, but the kid has no money, and they're at the tutoring college trying to get in an acceptance, and asked, well, do you have any kind of tutoring assistance or loan assistance? And he himself said the words that were said to him, no, we don't do that here. That later on comes back to like kind of
yes. No, you're right. Yeah.
A bicycle ride with a peasant, or not a peasant, but a common worker or whatnot. This person is talking about how messed up the world is, and he's coming in to realize how he's become part of that system. So he's disgusted with himself, sells all his possessions, his motorcycle, his jewelry, and everything. He goes broke basically to open up the school, like you said, and teach non-privileged kids to pass this ITT exam. All the meanwhile, Pankaj and the guy that helped him out in the beginning to go to school and teach are now upset because all the rich people's parents want him. That's why they went to that school, because they know how smart he is, and they want him to be their kid's tutor. So when they find out they're not there, they're putting pressure on Pankaj and on the school head over there. I forget his name. In any event, they do some grimy stuff to shut down his school, bro. They turn off the electricity. They turn local people against him. They even have a competition between the very affluent kids from the rich school versus his kids to see, what kids are going to be top. And basically, I'll feed your students if your students beat mine. But if not, you shut down your school and you come back and teach there. And even with his students disadvantaged and scared, they scored a 49%, where the other kids only scored a 52%, which these privileged kids don't have. He said one of the other kids, and one of the most powerful lines that was said was one of Hrithik Roshan's students, former students from the rich kid, says, why aren't you here anymore? Did we do something wrong? Why aren't you teaching?
That was awesome. Yeah.
And he looks at him, and he looks, because he's not upset at those kids. They were privileged. It's okay. And he has like this endearing little head nod, and he goes, did you eat breakfast this morning? And then and his student says, yes, of course. And he goes, they didn't. And that right there, man, that was one of those things, dude, that really just like, gosh, you know what I mean? For me, I think one of the reasons this movie touched me so much, Nick, is because I saw that firsthand. I've mentioned on this channel before, I got sent to the Dominican Republic. I mean, I was born overseas, grew up in New York City in the Bronx. And then at around 12, 13 years old, I can't remember the exact age, I got in big trouble for something. I was not taking school seriously to that time. I was a brat, grew up in New York, whatever. So my mom did a correct thing, sent me over there to see how the other half lives so that I could appreciate what I have here. And bro, what I saw out there were kids who wanted to go to school and couldn't afford it. Okay. Kids who were selling, working at an early age, not to buy Jordans, not to buy video games, but to help pay the bills in their own house, to help, put food on the table. School was the furthest thing from their minds. And I learned an appreciation for free education and public school education, which we have here in America, after I went to Dominican Republic. So I seen a lot of those kids in those same plights as we saw that were in India. And man, that honestly, that's why this movie touched me so much, because after my trip to the Dominican Republic, my year and a half stint over there, once I came back, I appreciated it so much more, bro. And I think that so many kids, and I do this all the time, every single year, I tell my students that same story, and I tell them, guys, education is a privilege. Yes, it's free, but don't ever come to school feeling like you're forced. I don't even like to punish my students. I know some educators do, and oh, you messed up, so I'm going to give you extra homework. I don't do that to my own kids. Why? Because I never want them to look at education as a negative thing. I don't want to make that negative correlation. It's a privilege to get a book. It's a privilege to be educated. And this movie showed that, where these struggling kids were sharing books, man, sharing books, what they were able to accomplish with what they had. Oh my gosh.
How awesome was that? When, I mean, there's so many awesome. That's why it's awesome scenes. That's why it's good to get the synopsis out of the way. So when we just talk about our favorite scenes, how awesome was that when he was trying to find an extra book or two for his students, and he was struggling because he had no money, he had no power whatsoever. And they decide to make their own projector out of the materials they have. Not just that, but I loved his teaching style. And we don't know if this is how the real guy did. I hope it was. But he taught them not just lessons, not just the technical stuff that he did, but he taught them life lessons. He taught them about overcoming and solving a problem and using different, like the law of reflection and whatnot, to try to teach them to use your mind and use your brain, and then how the screenwriter, the storyteller of the movie, was able to weave that into the story, where you have like I'll say Home Alone element, but it was way more serious than that at the end of the film, when they were able to use the lessons that he taught them to get out of that situation. It's the old adage: if you give a kid a fish, it'll feed him for a day. If you teach a kid how to fish, it'll teach him for his life. And that moment was really cool. There was another moment that you mentioned that I just thought was so funny and so awesome too. I can't remember what it was, but anyways, there was so many cool elements. I think the highlight in this film, if I can choose one, just because it embodied so much of the journey those kids went on, and even what the Anand character, and just thinking about it, it's giving me goosebumps. But when they're giving their performance, and they had to give the performance in English
Only, yes.
No Basanti, no. And it was cool because we know about Sholay, so we're able to relate 100%, because it wouldn't have had the same weight if we didn't have a little bit of the information from Sholay. But he was upset because when they had their competition, which would have fed them for 3 months to beat the rich kids, they kind of choked. They only lost by a few percentage points, but they choked. And he asked what happened, and they said, we just couldn't picture ourselves being with them at ITT. Basically, they got in their heads, and they knew the regular situation, and they didn't know how to act around these rich, affluent kids. And so he said, your punishment is you're going to go to their square, you're going to perform on a Holi, right, with all the colors and everything. You're going to perform, and you have to do all of it in English. And again, this speaks to their poverty level. They haven't had the means to learn a lot of English. They know some, and he's even asking them, what movie have you seen? Have you seen? Some of these kids haven't seen one movie, period. They just didn't have time for that. So they decided to perform the last scene of Sholay, the ending scene, where Basanti's got to dance on the glass. And that whole performance, at first, it was kind of awkward, and it was kind of weird, and I felt bad because the kids in the audience were making fun of them. But then when they all came together and they were hitting the ground with the drums, and they were singing, and they were going, no, no, no. And then some of the kids were really getting into it, and they were singing different parts that they were ad-libbing. That was awesome. And then the cherry on the sundae, the icing on the cake, was when you have Anand, Hrithik's character, really feeling it. And even though they're not speaking English anymore, because they said, we're tired trying to play your game. We're going to be ourselves, which I think was the lesson. And he didn't get mad at him. He nodded towards them, and they kept getting more into it and showing their pride and saying, no, no, no. That was awesome. He gets all emotional. They take him in there, and he's there. That right there, that moment, in my opinion, was his crowning acting moment in this movie. And he did a great job this entire movie. But that was where he really brought it, just in that scene of just reacting. There's so much that goes into that. That's what the funny thing I thought was when you were talking about how they were trying to shame him. That lady comes to his school and is like, he defiled me. He defiled me. And he's like, really? Where's this guy at? She's like, wherever he's at, I'm going to tell him off. He's like, well, that's me right now. You obviously don't know me. Nice try. Get
He
out
said,
of
"Let me
here
ask
and
you
at
a
least do
question."
some research before you try to defame me.
Yeah, he goes, "What does Anon look like?" Because he's standing right in front of her. She's like, and then she asks the dude that's with her, "What does Anon look like?" He's like, "That's him right there." that was really funny.
That was
You know,
so good.
we're talking a lot about the story, and we're talking about the story because we talked about that's really what makes a film great, the story. And this story is absolutely amazing. It's amazing that it's a biopic, so it's based on some elements of truth. Obviously, I'm sure the director took some liberties with the story, but I like how the story began. And the story actually begins not with a non-story, but with one of his students' story, and it's the guy from Gully Boy, right? He's one of the actors.
Yeah,
from
BJ Varma, one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, BJ Varma, and he's talking about how he's speaking in Hindi because in Hindi, I should say, because English is not a luxury that everyone in his country has to have, and that's what keeps the have from the have-nots. But then he's talking about how many famous and influential Indians people there are there. And he's like, from a third world country, check out who runs Google. He said, go ahead and Google who runs Google, and go ahead and Google who's this. It's an Indian person, and all these companies. And dude, I fact checked it. And I was like, oh wow, he's right. You know what I mean? Like, we have so many smart people over here, but there's so many more that were smart, but they were just underprivileged and not as privileged as I was. And he's giving a speech with his mom and his dad there in the audience, and you find out what role he plays later in the film. But dude, that was a really powerful moment because, again, it wasn't a non-story. He didn't even want that. He could have had the fame. He had the fame at one point, and he said, "No, this is not what I want to use my intelligence and my gift for. I want to help others." And so he self-sacrificed. Okay, but it was because you saw the fruits of his labor and how he quote unquote paid it forward, and how his students now paying it forward, right? Trying to inspire others. This probably had my favorite song of any Indian movie I've ever seen, which is question mark, right? And I was like, wow, that was so cool. The visuals were cool with the little question marks over the kids' heads. And technically, let's not go over the, we're talking a lot about the story, but the technical aspects of this film. It was shot flawlessly, man. It looked, I saw it on my TV. I'm not sure if it was actually 4K. It might have been 4K, but it looked so crisp. Some of the shots were so amazing. Like you said, when they were at the square and pounding the ground, a lot of time when the rain hit the ground, it was just so visually stunning and beautiful. And I know people are going to say, oh, it's because he's got beautiful eyes. But Hrithik Roshan, the way he acts with his eyes, you feel the pain in his eyes. He conveys his emotions through his eyes. And I was like, man, I felt silly for even making the comment because I knew you were going to bring it up when I asked, can this dude even act after watching the trailer for Krish 3? After watching this, of course, you know what I mean, dude? But it was just an amazing film. All right, just to give you guys a quick or not synopsis. Nick already did that. The guy Pankaj, and even as a bad guy, Pankaj is amazing. He's like, look, if he keeps giving away what we're charging for free, okay, people are gonna lynch us. Okay, so we need to go ahead and stop him by any means necessary. And his underling says, well, I already cut the power at his school. I tried to defame his name. I tried to make a bet so that we can bring him back here. And he looks at me and he says, you're in the big leagues, man. That's child's play. And he doesn't necessarily say think bigger or go get him killed. But basically he says, I don't want those kids to take the test. I don't want him being around when the test starts. So they try to kill him. That's insane to me. And they send a guy that he gets shot in the stomach. And they're like, man, it's to the level which power will go to hold on to its power. You know what I'm saying? Was another underlying message, I should say, of this film. And he knew he was in danger. His brother went to the police station, which was one of the things that bothered me. How do you go to the police station and you're like, listen, there's a threat on my life. It's real, and my brother's life. And the cop was like, I got one guy out on maternity leave. I got other guys with the minister. I got who do you want me to put on you? Like, what? Like, are you serious? And it felt like at times like the same people that should be fighting for his cause, because they're all in that same poverty level, are against him. Like, it was so frustrating. But let's be honest, that's probably a real part of life. Most times in life, people aren't willing to risk what they have, the little that they have, to stand up against authority and to stand up against power. So, I mean,
Yeah. And that's what's so awesome about this story is he came from that poverty. He had the taste of success, and then he made a decision which very few people do. And I'm not going to say they're bad for not making that decision, to give back and help others, to where he's still going to live in poverty, but he's going to be an influence. He's going to help others to get there. You know, the guy who's a police officer, and I know you're not saying this, but he definitely wasn't a jerk about it. He was just trying to be serious. Like, I have all these guys, but this is the reality that we're not going to be able to help you out, even though we probably should. He's in a position where maybe he came from poverty and he has a nice job. He's not going to risk that because he knows, there's so many other people that would love to take that job from him, and he's got to feed his family. There a few of the complaints I have, and all of them do deal with Hrithik Roshan. This is the best performance I've ever seen him give, obviously. And I liked him in War. I thought his performance in War was fine, even though the film wasn't great. My few complaints was just confusion. It seemed like at first, and it didn't seem like a long period of time, it seemed like at first he was playing the genius who was just aloof to social situations and was kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of dumb when it comes to social and street smarts. And then when he got the job, and yes, he had his dad die, and that was tough. When he got the job, he did a complete 180, and he was just a superstar and, like, the 1980s Miami Vice type style and everything. And he's got the vehicle, and he just didn't look back. And this was before I knew what the story and where it was going to go. I thought in some of those moments, his acting wasn't completely consistent. I thought in some of those moments, I'm not sure exactly who this Anand is. Is he this aloof guy? Or is he this guy who's super with it when he's the teacher of these kids? And maybe it could be explained in he got some life lessons and it shaped him as a person. But I think I would have liked to know that when we see Anand earlier on, was that him like 18 or 19 and he was just still growing mature-wise? Because it looks like he was 25, 26. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it just seemed like some of the acting was a little incongruent. But then the second half of the film, his acting really started to shine. And I'm like, okay, this is the character. But the character seemed a little uneven at times.
I think that was by design, though. Here's the thing. I'm not the same person I was 7 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. You're not the same person you were. So yes, some time had obviously lapsed there, because we went from him being a student to him being a teacher now, and his dad dying and everything he went through. Plus, I think that was also, at first, he was very timid, although he knew he was the smartest guy in the room. He was always the smartest guy. And even when they were at in the very beginning at the national competition, he's just, for education's sake, he's looking over at the problem the other guy's solving, and he's like, oh, he solves problems for fun. He goes to the library and he's working on books and trying to take
I'm just trying to read this scholar article. What are you kicking me out of the library? I'm just trying to read it.
And I love how he comes back when he gets in there and shows his picture, like, you see. But here's one of the problems, and not problems, but one of the realities of life. And maybe you, and I know you personally, you're not one of those people. I wish I could say I'm not, but I have to even catch myself, where a lot of times success, and more than just success, but affluence, a lot of time breeds that apathy, breeds that confidence, and sometimes confidence turns to arrogance. You saw that arrogance came upon him, but it came with the nice clothes, with the chains, with the cars, with everything. And sometimes you're ahead of yourself. You become overconfident. We've all, but a lot of us fall in that trap. I know you personally. I know why. That's why you can't really relate to that. You would be whether you had $1 million today or you have the same money you have in your bank account right now, you're going to be Nick. I know who you are. Very few people are like that, my friend. A lot of people get success and they let it go to their heads. I've been guilty of it myself in the past. So I think that's what happened. If you look back at the film, You know, he went from being so timid and so shy, even though he was smarter than everybody. And so to now, I'm the man. I'm getting paid. My posters all around town. I got a car. I got a chain. I got watches. I got whatever. He bought his brother watches or whatever. You know, you can't tell me nothing. I'm successful, whatever. And then he was humbled by anything else, a cab driver or a bicycle driver who was giving him a ride home that night, because he was kind of telling him, like, who's going to make these changes, and making him see how he became part of that elite group that he despised himself, because they ultimately stopped him from his ultimate goal, which was going to Cambridge and flexing his muscle, because he never gets to Cambridge, you know. And here's the thing. He is not the only one. There are so many kids out there, not just in India, not just in Dominican Republic, not just in third world countries, but even here in America, that are so bright. I've met so many kids that have so many, you know, but for whatever reason, like he said, they were born into the wrong family. They were born in the wrong zip code. They were born with the wrong surname. And your family, no matter how smart you are, will never be able to get you to go to that Ivy League school or that preparatory school that costs 20 grand a month. You know, there's a school out here that's a high school, okay, that is more than most colleges. No joke. I get in trouble for saying it. Dude, Bishop Gorman has games on ESPN. They got one of the most successful high school football programs in the entire country. Okay. It costs so much to go to this school. Not everybody has that opportunity. Okay. So the reality is, you can take a kid out of North Las Vegas to get a wherever, the worst neighborhood, and they may be as smart as that kid that goes to Bishop Gorman. But does that mean they're both going to have the same opportunities? No, that's not the reality of life. So, I mean, dude, that's why this movie was so impactful, dude. And at the end, I could not contain myself, bro. It was like, and I'm trying to do macho thing, like, okay, you know, tears okay, but when you're uncontrollably crying, that hasn't happened to me probably since Endgame, bro, where I'm like, man, I'm just gushing. I can't do it. This
Endgame and Super 30. I love it.
It was an amazing film, bro.
This film, I mean, this would be an hour review if we talked about every aspect. I'm going to try to sew this up a little bit. This film, I love the ending. I love how the students came together and helped out the teacher. I really like the scene where he gets shot, not because he gets shot, because it was just so real. I mean, it kind of like, whoa, the guy just took a gun out and shot him. And I felt like I knew it was coming, but it was just so raw. I didn't think he was going to survive, so that was nice. Spoiler alert. But the way the kids came out and they did what they could to trap those guys, who, you know, the same punk that owns Excellent Schools sends after him because he gets pressured by the minister, and all of that was awesome. He's back in the classroom. They take the test, and every single one of them passes. And that is the dream as a teacher, that every single one of my students succeeds. That not me myself, but I help these students all succeed and reach their goals. And for them, it was to pass that test so they can get in. Now, I'm not sure if you pass that test, do you get a scholarship? Because there's no way they're going to be able to afford the tuition. I don't know about that, but I'm not too worried about that. They were able to reach their goal and show that they can do something. And then at the very end, you see him teaching his next class, and you see as it pans out, you see the other guy. And it took me a second because it says in the description back there that Anand Kumar, as recently as last year, is still getting death threats and still getting people to come after him, which I understand. I mean, he's definitely pulling money out of those people's pockets, not intentionally, because they're robbing these people to give them a decent product. But not just that, but when I was thinking about it, and they had that competition with the two schools, the school beat his school barely, but like with 52%. Like, I'm paying all this money for only 1 out of 2 kids to be able to pass that exam. Like, are you kidding me? That's the school of excellence. So that was kind of an interesting thing. I liked its element of rain and water in this film. It seemed like every time it was destitute and it was tough, there was water involved in some way. I'm not sure if I'm just reading too much into it, but that seemed interesting. But I mean, it definitely takes you to the poverty levels. It takes you. I love how they had their school, this broken down hostel, and, you know, we're going to turn into a school. And I wonder if that's the same school that actually was used. I don't know. But I love this movie. I'm going to grade this already. I'm going to give it a solid A, not an A+, because it blew me away. It just didn't blow me away like the A+ movies. I have a feeling you might be giving it A+, but still, I'm giving it a solid A because this is a great film. I didn't expect it to be that good.
You know, I have to give it an A+, man. From personal experience, I've seen and I've been in those shoes of some of those kids. And it was crazy because, you know, I remember in Dominican Republic, right? My grandmother at the school where I went to or whatever, which was a private school, whatever, she would like buy uniforms for the other kids, not related, just kids that lived in the neighborhood. And I never understood. Like I was just like, I'm an Americanized kid, you know what I mean? I got sent up there, and then my grandmother was like, if they don't get that uniform, they'll wear last year's uniform, and some of them have grown, you know, a full foot, 2 foot, whatever. And I was like, what? And it was like, yeah, like, you know, they don't have money. They work to pay to go to school. There is no such thing as public education. And that really hit home to me. How many kids around the world, like the guy was saying earlier on, he's like, you know, these are kids from a third world country. And that's the guy that runs Google. That's the guy that runs Microsoft. That's the guy, you know, and there's talent there, but there's so many kids that don't have an opportunity to utilize that talent. Again, Anand was, by all definitions of the word, a genius. And had he had the opportunity to go to Cambridge, could you imagine? I mean, obviously he had a much bigger impact because he's impacting other students. But for just on a personal note, what could he have accomplished if he did go to Cambridge? This guy could have gone over there, become a doctor. I mean, he was a mathematician, but he could have, you know, cured cancer, whatever. The contributions he could have made to society, to the world in and of itself. And there's so many Anands out there, you know what I mean? And that's probably, to me, that was the biggest message of this film. That's how come I got to give it an A+. And, you know, ultimately, I think that one of the things, and I try to tell my students this every year, guys, value your education. And I know, especially we teach at elementary school level, so it's tough, but I try to tell kids value that education, because there's kids right here in America that don't have the opportunity that you have to go to a school in a nice neighborhood with clean clothes, with, you know what I'm saying, that don't even have the opportunity to bring their own food. They have to eat school lunch. You know what I mean? You have that choice. Some kids don't even have that choice. And there's kids around the world that are much less fortunate than you. So I emphasize that. And I go off, you know, on a probably 15, 20-minute rant with my kids. You know, I love ranting every year. And I emphasize it. And I think if just one kid, I'm able to really emphasize how it's a privilege to go to school and it's a privilege to get an education, I did my job that year. So, I mean, that's just me. So I got to give it an A+. I know we've been going on for a while, but especially for Teacher Appreciation Week, I'm going to suggest, just like I did for Three Idiots, just like I did with, help me pronounce it, Tar
Zamin Par.
Thank you, Tar Zamin Par. You're so much better than I am. All educators should see this film, because ultimately, when you get a kid in your class that does not fit the mold of a normal kid, you need to still look at that child and say, this kid can learn. This kid has an opportunity, as my job as an educator, as their educator, to bring that out of them. And you fight tooth and nail to get it out of themselves, not for a test score, like you said at the beginning. I love that you mentioned that, but just so that kid knows, I can do this. I can do this. Just give them that belief. And I think that that's what he did when he put them in the square, you know, in front of all those other kids, made them believe in themselves. Like, what do you mean you guys can't compete with these guys? You know what I mean? That you guys are just as good as that. Look what you were able to accomplish, and you weren't even confident. You lost by 2 points. Could you imagine if you were confident? It was just an amazing statement. Hrithik Roshan, to all his fans, I apologize. Yes, Karish 3 was not even a good representation of what this guy's able to accomplish. And I tell you what, this really showed me that he's got serious acting chops. Serious acting chops.
Yeah, I just want to end. I just random scene from the movie that I thought was really cool was where the ex-girlfriend, now married to that, I'm not sure if he's a bank officer or whatever he was, and she took out the contract that he signed. And so he gets back in the car and he's sitting with her, and she admits to it. She's like, I took the contract. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure I know you did. And, you know, I'm sure he was worthy. He seems like a good guy. He didn't take offense to it. He didn't get jealous. He didn't backhand or anything. They looked at each other and they started laughing about it. I thought that was just like a cool little scene, because I didn't expect that to happen that way. Showed that guy was pretty cool, that he was under a lot of pressure from these other guys who was under the pressure of the Minister of Education. So that was cool. We hope you enjoyed our review. This one is probably one of our longest, if not our longest review, with probably the most words we've ever used, because of how much we love teaching and how this related to it. It's a great film. Check it out if you haven't checked it out yet. Don't forget to check out our Patreon. Don't forget to check out our other videos. Don't forget to watch all the beautiful ads that are on our thing all the way through. It really helps us out. Don't forget to do all the wonderful stuff that helps us out. And until next time,
we can all know all things.